Alright, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about conventional deadlifts and sumo deadlifts and just kind of go over some of the basics on how you can kind of get started on the deadlifts, right? So number one that I want to talk about is just your equipment. And one of the things that I notice a lot of people when they deadlift is they don't really care too much about their shoes. They might deadlift, let's say sumo with socks, or they might deadlift with their running shoes and stuff like that. But just think about the deadlifts in itself. You're sitting or you're standing in one position and you're not moving. So if you think about running shoes are made to run or to move, right? You want a pair of shoes that's going to help you stay stabilized. If you're a conventional deadlifter, you could do with shoes or without, it doesn't really matter, but I still prefer wrestling shoes. Now if you look at the pair of wrestling shoes that I have, it has grip all over the bottom of the shoe. That way, if you're kind of like me where you're more technical, you're going to rely on the force of your feet and your shoes to kind of help you lift up the weight. And this is very important, especially like if you're on slippery floor. So number one is always going to be make sure you have a very good pair of shoes, or if you're a conventional deadlifter, you can go barefoot or socks, and that should be okay. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to go over is the belt. This isn't necessary. You could train without a belt, but if you're learning how to deadlift for the first time, or if you're deadlifting really, really heavy, I mean, why not? It's a safety thing. It'll help protect your back a little bit more. It'll help increase your abdominal pressure. Everything just seems a lot more easier with a belt, so I usually always recommend a belt. This is a lever belt, very easy. I love it. Clip it on, clip it off. Next thing, this isn't necessary, but it might be good to have. Just your chalk and your straps. So in case you have like some grip issues, you can use straps if you're just trying to build muscle versus build strength. For chalk, it's just to kind of help, especially when you get nervous, your hands are going to get sweaty. You could chalk up your hands. You'll be able to grip the bar a little bit better. And at the same time, if you're a competitive power lifter, chalk is more ideal. But again, if you're just in the gym, you're just trying to get a bigger deadlift PR, or you're just trying to build some muscle here and there, do some high reps, stuff like that, then it wouldn't really matter if you use chalk or straps. That will be up to your personal preference. So this is just the basics of equipment. I usually use the shoes and the belt for all three of the power lifts, but just for today, just be aware of your shoes. If you are worried about getting injured, then maybe a belt, especially like the lever belt. I really like it because you can clip it on, clip it off. You don't have to worry about like the prong belts where it takes like a lot of effort to put it on, take it off, and of course the straps and the chalk. Alright, so just some things to think about before you even deadlift. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is kind of go over the conventional deadlift, and I want you to see the way I set up my feet and where I set my hands. Okay, so first off, I'm going to line up my feet to line up with my shoulders. Okay, along with my arms, I want my arms to be as long as they possibly can. Now if you notice where my shoulders are lining up, normally that's where I would normally want to put my hands, but because my knees and my leg is in the way, I'm trying to put my hands as close as possible to the path of my lockout. Now the longer your arms are, the less distance you're going to have to travel, and the more weight you're going to be able to hold on to, the more muscle you're going to be able to build, the more strength you're going to be able to build. So the idea is when you grip the bar, you want to grip as close as you can to your legs, where your arm is the longest for a conventional deadlift. Now I'm going to show you a different view for the conventional deadlift. Now this is, you could do this as well where you point your feet straight. And this is kind of how I like to tell people, when you stand above the bar, you want the bar to literally cut your feet in half. Now every time you do a lift or every time you do a rep and the bar is no longer cutting your feet in half, that means you're compromising your position and you need to reset. That's why if you ever watch me deadlift, I'm always watching my feet, I'm always watching my hands, making sure everything is perfect every single time I deadlift. Now this is what I usually recommend. This is kind of like a bad picture where my right foot is tilted a little bit more than the left. But I usually always tell people when you conventional, it'll be a better idea to kind of turn your feet out maybe 10 to 15, maybe even 20 degrees, depending on the person, but turn it out just a little bit more than normal, for the simple fact that when you turn your feet out, you're able to flex your glutes a little bit better. Now, excuse the video, but I'm going to show you guys exactly what I mean. So if you see here, this is going to be me standing just straight, right? So I'm going to turn my right foot a little bit, and I'm going to turn my left foot a little bit, like if I was doing conventional deadlift. Now, if you look at my glutes, it's flexed way harder. You're going to be able to see my hamstrings activate a little bit more. This is just my glutes being flexed as I stand. Now, if you watch, I'm going to flex my glutes a little bit harder. Imagine as if I was doing the actual deadlift. Flexing, and then I'm loosening it up, just like if I was lifting the deadlift and then locking out. Now, this is me opening up my legs a little bit, pointing my feet more straight. Now, if you look, my hamstrings and my glutes look more relaxed. This is the reason why I tell people you'd rather turn your feet out a little bit more. Now, as you watch, I'm going to try to flex my glutes, and it's a lot more difficult to flex when my feet's pointing forward. So, as you see, right when I stand up, I'm really trying to flex my glutes as hard as I can. So now remember, the feet turned out just a little bit, and again, this is your personal preference. If you prefer pointing your feet straighter, please don't listen to anything I gotta say. Do what you gotta do. But I personally prefer turn feet out, hands close, and that's conventional deadlift stance. Alright, so now we're gonna go over the sumo deadlift, and we're gonna go over again the feet positioning and the hand positioning. And what you're gonna notice is my ankles and my knees are gonna kind of line up, kind of perpendicular. And the same thing with my hand positioning. The way I want to position my hand is where it is the longest my arms can be. So pretty much try to get it under your shoulders, or right under your shoulders as long as possible, and keep your ankles and your knees kind of lined up the best that you can. Now, the way you turn your feet is usually always where the flat part of your shin is on the bar. And a lot of people always ask me how much you need to turn out your feet. Usually the wider you sumo, the more you want to turn out your feet. As you can see, my feet is a little bit past the ring. This is where I normally sit, so my feet turn out more. If you bring your feet inwards, then you want to turn your feet a little bit more in. Now, this is my feet turn more forward. You don't want to do this, because if you watch, if I was to deadlift, it might chip my kneecap, and that hurts really, really bad. So you definitely don't want to pull sumo with your feet pointing forward. You kind of want to turn it on the side. And again, if you watch me as I sumo, my knees and my ankles are going to be kind of as straight as possible, and where I'm going to try to hit every time is going to be where my arm is the longest. And this is kind of how you're going to be able to, again, lift the most amount of weight, have the least amount of pain. Again, this is my sumo stance, so if you feel a little bit more comfortable going a little bit wider, then go for it, because once you learn how to deadlift, you could pretty much do whatever you want. You ain't gonna listen to me. And this is the sumo grip, why you want to kind of keep it lined under your shoulders. If you notice, if you grip a little bit too wide, the angle of your arms are going to be a little bit wider, and as you pull, you're going to be working out different muscles, and it's going to tug your bones and shoulder and all this in different ways. And this is kind of the opposite, a little bit closer in, and you don't really want to be doing that. You want to kind of be able to utilize your leverages and the way your body is meant to. So again, make sure your arms are as long as possible. You're going to be able to lift the most amount of weight. And again, mess around with your leg distance or your leg stance and stuff like that. All right, so I cannot stress this enough. I'm going to set up my conventional. I'm going to put my feet, turn them out 10-15 degrees, right? Make sure the barbell is cutting my feet in half. I'm going to set my hand position as close as I can to my feet. And as I set my back, I'm going to take a deep breath into my stomach. You're going to notice my body's going to form a right triangle, right? Where my shoulders are lined up directly on top of the bar. My butt and my hamstrings are kind of in this shape where it's in the perfect position to kind of pull straight up and then flex my glutes like earlier. Now, if you look, I imagine there's like an imaginary wall right in front of my face. And if I can't maintain this position, then I'm not having good form and I need to work on my technique. Same thing with the sumo. I'm going to set my feet, right? I'm gonna make sure that everything's perfect by looking at where my feet are on the rings and stuff. Fix my hands. I'm gonna take a deep breath into my stomach, flex my back, and boom, you're gonna see another right triangle. And I'm gonna imagine there's another wall right in front of my face, and until I can maintain or stare at this wall for like a good second or two, I don't even want to think about pulling the weight. So if you can maintain this triangle, you're never ever gonna get hurt. And this is the kind of technique that you want to have every single time as you deadlift, okay? All right, so to help maintain the triangle position, I'm going to show you how I flex my abs, okay? So you want to take a huge breath into your stomach, right? And you want to flex as hard as you can for 1 rep per rep, all right? You don't want to take a deep breath into your face. You want to take a deep breath into your stomach, and it should be super tight, very similar to what mixed martial artists would do when they take a punch or a kick to the stomach. You want to be able to flex so hard that the moment you do the rep, when someone kicks you in the stomach, you're not going to lose your positioning. And that's usually what I do every single time when you see me take a deep breath as I do each rep, okay? Right, so the next thing that I do that a lot of people will notice is I always do this thing before I deadlift, right? And technically this is kind of what happens. What I'm really doing is flaring my lats, and I'm setting it into position. And this is how you maintain that triangle position, by keeping your upper back tight and your abs tight, okay? And one of the tips that I usually like telling people is, you know, for all the big lifts, right, you always want to keep your elbows close. So if you watch, you know, when I flex my back, the closer I bring my triceps or my elbows to my body, you're gonna see more of my back crunch, right? And you want to be able to do this for all 3 of the power lifts, for the deadlifts, the bench, and the squat. And if you can maintain the tightness of your abs, the tightness of your upper body, right, the better you do this, the better you're gonna get at staying tight, and it's just gonna become more natural. And a good way to practice this is literally, like, if you're in class, you could just take a deep breath, flex your abs, and flare your lats. I mean, honestly, you could even do this if you were at Walmart when you're waiting in line, and you can just literally flare your lats. You know, people might be thinking you're doing something stupid, but again, you know, you're not trying to impress other people. You're just doing this to kind of help practice yourself. And the better you get at doing this, the better off you'll be when you lift really, really heavy weights. Now, the reason why I say that it's a good idea to practice flexing your abs and flexing your back is because it's not necessarily that you don't have back muscles and you don't have ab muscles, but it might be the lack of you understanding how to utilize these muscles when you perform the lifts. So the more you practice utilizing your back, utilizing your abs, utilizing your quads, utilizing your glutes, and really, really flexing each one of these muscles, the better off you be when you lift 500-600 pounds.